Hey there everybody, and welcome to this very quick setup video for the Simple Sharing app by CodelessFix.com, built using AppGyver. Now before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the channel for new content, and check out CodelessFix.com for more tutorials. Now jumping straight in, I'm going to be walking through start to finish essentially how you can go ahead and get the Simple Sharing app set up and customized for yourself. It's a very quick and painless process. Best of all, you only really need 2 free accounts. So first you need to head over to appgyver.com and sign up for the free community edition. No credit card is required. And then you'll need to go over to google.firebase, or I think it's firebase.google.com, and you'll need to sign up for your free account using a Gmail account there. Now, I highly recommend, if you've seen my other videos when it comes to pricing, don't do anything as far as paying for the next tier until you understand exactly how pricing works. It's a pay-as-you-go model, so if you have a couple of users, they can run up your bill very quickly. So make sure to check out the optimization video first. Now, we're going to go ahead and jump straight in. So we have AppGyver set up. This is what your dashboard will look like. I have a couple of apps here, but if yours is empty, don't worry about it. So first thing to do is we're going to click Create New. Now when you do this, there's an import from file option, and then you can name the file. Now I don't believe you have the ability to drag and drop here, unfortunately, but you can go to select file and then just choose the file from your downloads. Now this is going to be the file you get from CodelessFix.com. It is in a zipped folder, so all you need to do is extract the single file to your desktop, or if there are multiple, but there shouldn't be. Then you'll name your app, so I'm calling mine Simple Sharing. And again, I will be putting a link in the description to a demo of the app if you want to see it in action. So now we're going to click Create, and it could take any number of seconds or minutes, just depends, for this to get set up for you. So basically, AppGyver is going to import everything. So you will want to do a little bit of testing to make sure everything's come through correctly. First thing you need to do is update the privacy policy and terms and conditions with your privacy policy and terms and conditions. I don't provide those for liability reasons. Next up, we're going to get set up in Firebase because the majority of the connections are working between this app and Firebase. So when you've signed up for your free Firebase account, you'll go to your dashboard and we're going to click Add Project. And we're going to name the project here. So I'm just going to call this Simple Sharing since I don't really plan to keep it. Now when you do this, make a note of this unique identifier here because this is what you're going to be using in the future for AppGyver, because this may be the project name, but this is how AppGyver communicates with the project. So I would recommend, if you have the ability, go ahead and click in here and copy this. It's good to have it to be something a little bit unique, just to kind of keep data a little bit safe. Now on this page, you can set up Google Analytics if you want. It never hurts. You can choose an analytics account if you need to. I'm just choosing default, and then you'll just click Create. Now, while this is loading, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our application and just walk through the first few things that we're going to change. First thing is you need to go to your variables slider. Now, if you're a little bit scared about this whole Firebase and AppGyver setup, I have tons of other AppGyver tutorials on CodelessFix.com and on the Tyler Talks YouTube channel. But basically, I'll walk you through what you need to know in this video. So if you go to App Variables, when you've clicked on the Variables slider, you can scroll through and you'll see there's an API key variable. This is the first thing we're going to change. And then you're going to be changing your project name. So we'll go ahead and change this one first and then do the API key. So this value is the one that we just copied from Firebase. So we will paste that in, and then we're going to go get our API key next. So you'll see the project is ready. So we'll go into the Simple Sharing app in Firebase. We'll go to Build. First thing, we'll enable authentication just by clicking authentication and clicking Get Started. If at any point in Firebase you see what looks like a weird dashboard that doesn't match up with mine, you can Google the different Google Firebase views. There's a native, I believe, or I think, and then there's another view or two. So you're just going to want to have similar views to me. So we're going to click email and password in the sign in page. We'll click enable here and save. Now, if you want, you can look at the template and change the automatic email that goes to people when they need to verify their email. So for example, they're going to get an email like this. You can click edit to make changes to this if you feel compelled to do so. Now that authentication is set up, we're going to go over to, if you need storage, you can set it up. One thing to note, I do not cover security setup in any of my videos. So for the test and sample apps, I will typically use more generic security settings that are open. I do not recommend you do that because obviously you want to keep your users' data private. So make sure that when it comes to security, user data controls, and access, that you're following any and all applicable rules, laws, guidelines, etc., because this is going to be your application. So in this case, with that being said, if you want to have storage, you can. Storage is kind of like a virtual hard drive where you'll have images or things for the app if you want it. But what we need is Cloud Firestore next. So we're going to click on Firestore Database. We'll start in production mode. You'll choose the location closest to your user base or to yourself, whichever you prefer. You can't change it later, so make sure that you set it up correctly the first time around. And then basically we are just waiting for this to get set up. Now I'm going to change the rules on mine to make this an open database. I don't recommend that you do this. This way we don't have to worry about authentication. I can just send and receive data to get this app configured. If you set the rules, which is what they are by default, as allow, read, write if false, then it's not going to work because it can't read or write. You've set the rules up that way. So now we have our little database here, and we have our authentication set up. So now we can go to project settings. And then here we have this web API key, which is exactly what we need for this variable here. So we will hit Control A, Control V, and paste in this new API key. Now, one thing to note, if you decide to set this up as a mobile and web app, you'll need to do a couple of things here. Now, I've shown this in other videos, so I'm not going to show it in full detail here, but the idea here is, if you close this slider, what we're going to be doing is we are going to go to the Auth tab, which is authentication. You can remove it if you want, but that's going to essentially break the app because there's no way to save user data at that point. So you're going to click, if you need to, enable, which you shouldn't, and then we have authentication set up, which means users start with a login page. To that point, we do have to get that page set up. So what we do at this point is we basically do what we're adding a connector. So if we go to the Data tab and we go to Connectors, you'll see that we have Firebase and a bunch of data here, which is connected to my sample database. This is not what you want. You want to set yours up for whatever application you're using. So I recommend deselecting and reselecting. In some cases, if you do it individually at least, it'll delete the data that's already there because none of this data is going to work for you. If you don't need an iOS app, you can deselect. If you don't need an Android app, you can deselect. If you think you may need it, you might as well keep those open and do the configuration now so that you don't forget. But by deselecting and reselecting, it just clears out the data. So we'll fill out part of this together. So what we will do is we will start off with the web app. So again, we are in our Firebase settings at the bottom, clicking the web app, and we'll name it. So you'll need to choose the name that works for you and your needs. I'm just calling mine Simple Sharing. You can set up Firebase hosting if you feel the need to. And then you'll have all of this information provided here, which is, for the most part, what we need to get this application set up. So we're going to scroll down, and first thing, we're going to delete all of this, If you leave any of this the same, it's probably going to break part of the app in some way, shape, or form. So we're going to copy over this API key, which should look familiar. So we are in the web app configuration. We have the web API key. Now we're going to do the app ID. So we will copy this and paste it in here. And then we need our project ID. So you'll basically just look through this for each individual piece of information, and you do not need the double quotes. It's just the text or numbers or characters in between. So now we need auth domain. So at this point, I'm going to try to move a little bit quicker just because this is really self-explanatory. Each field corresponds to the field on the other page. So we'll get the measurement ID. Copy that. Storage bucket. And we will copy this. And then message sender ID. And so we have the web app configuration. I'll walk through the Android app configuration. You can do the iOS on your own because it's basically the exact same process. So now, when we're in our project settings, so again, you can just go to Firestore Database, or really anywhere in your project overview, and when you click here and click Project Settings, you'll see we now have our web app, and now we can go to Add App, and we can choose iOS. So I'll just do this really quickly. So it would be com.company.appname, so this is your relevant info. So I'm just going to call this something that I'm never going to use. I'm not going to nickname it, but you would obviously want to put your app ID and nickname. And then you can download your config file. And when you download that, you'll get something that looks like this. So I have mine opened in Visual Studio Code. I think you can open this in, if I'm not mistaken, like Notepad or Notepad++, but all the info that you need is here. So the idea is if we go to our iOS app configuration here, you'll see that we have all the info we need. So we have client ID, which is client ID that we need. If you type in Control F, you can type in the text API. And then you'll see that we have our API key right here. It's in between this string and this string. So it's just the text / characters in between these two fields here under API key. And then it's the same thing for app ID. So we can basically hit Control V again and type in app. And then you just look for app ID. So in this case, you can scroll through, and again, you'll see we have Google Play App ID. In my case, I don't think that we're going to find one because I did not enter in an app ID for this application when I set it up in Firebase. So you'll just need to find your app ID if it's in that document. I may have one, but again, just doing a high-level overview. Then we're going to do the Android. So we are just going to click Next. Make sure that you add in the SDK if you need it. And then Next. And then continue to Console. Now what we're going to do is we are going to remember for iOS that we have this info.plist. That's going to come up in just a minute. And then we're going to add app and we're going to do Android. So it's the same thing. So we're going to put com.whatever your company. I don't even have an app name, and we'll put in the nickname here. You can put in your debug signing certificate, and then you're going to get your config file. So we're going to download this, and it looks a little bit scary, but don't worry, it's not. You're literally just going to do the exact same thing. So we are going to open this page and go to Android app. You'll click your JSON file. I open mine with Visual Studio Code, but you can use whatever code builder you need. And you'll get this page. So here, you can hit Control F. The first thing we need is the app ID. So we'll type in app. And we'll scroll through and try to find the app ID. So in this case, sometimes it's easier just to put ID. And then, let's see, we'll scroll through and see which one looks best. So I believe I think at least I usually just use the client ID, which is this long string here. Just because there's not anything in here that says app ID. So I would usually just use the client ID. But again, you're going to have to use whatever is for your app specifically. So then when we find the Android API key, you're going to find your API key for Android, which is different from the other API keys. So you'll grab this API key and paste it in here. And then you need your client ID, which is right here. So in the case of the Android app ID, you're just going to need to find whatever text or information is relevant to yours. If you have trouble, sometimes you can come over here, and when you're in your Apple apps, typically you can actually find your app ID right here. So you could paste that into your app ID for iOS, and then go to Android, and here is your app ID for Android. So you don't have to use the other one. So the Android app ID goes here, the API key here, and then the client ID, which we just found, would just go in the client ID field. So you can do that for all of those different application types. Now that we have that, we're going to save our information. So we'll make sure we have everything. We'll click Save. Now, one very important part, I'm going to skip ahead just a bit because this is what you're going to need if you decide to use this as a mobile app. You're going to go to Launch, Distribute, Open Build Services. This is where you customize the application for your different apps. So we're going to go to Configure for the web app first. You can ignore this first field. Bundle settings are going to be zip. Image assets, you need to get a fav icon or a fav icon. This is what shows up in the preview here. I believe you may be getting whichever one I have set up on here, but the idea is it's usually a 16 by 16 image, and it's a .ico file. So look up online basically where to make those, and make sure you're getting it from a reputable source so that you're not downloading anything harmful. Then you'll click Save and Next, and you'll click Build. Now, you don't need to do this yet, but what we're doing is when you decide you're ready to build and deploy your app, these are the deployment steps. So you'll choose the most recent runtime version, you'll set a version number, and you'll click Build. When you do that, eventually you'll have a download link here for your zip files. Now, when it comes to the Android and iOS, the reason I'm doing this a little bit earlier in the video, I will have more detailed videos that follow, but I just want you to remember while you have these Google Services plist and JSON files, we're going to go configure Android real quick. So you will need to create a key store, which I'll have a separate video on. And in your bundle settings, you would fill this out. You'll upload all of your image assets, permissions, and then when it comes to advanced, you'll see right here it says missing files. You need to have your Google Services JSON file. This is what we downloaded and got all of our Android information from. If you ever lose it, you can go to your Android option and download it right here. So you'll just click Add and upload the file. Choose AAB as the bundle type. Google now uses the AAB bundle as the app that you're uploading, basically, but you can look into that on your own time. And then you can build here and go through the setup, AAB, most recent versions, set your version code, and click Build when you're ready. And a download will appear whenever you're ready to download. Lastly, and really quickly, you'll need to create your iOS certificate, which, if I'm not mistaken, you need a Mac device for, or you would need, there's some weird tricks that you can do with Windows, but it may be a little bit more difficult. But I'm not going to be going through that. You can do your bundle settings, image assets, usage strings, and then under advanced, this is where you upload your Google Service info plist. We've already downloaded that, but if you lose yours, you can click your Apple app in your project settings and download Google Services info plist, and then simply upload it here and click Save and Next. The reason I would recommend doing these three options here is AppGyver will save it, so it'll have it in the future. It'll make it a lot easier for you going forward Otherwise, when you go to build it, you'll get an error message, and it may take a minute or two for you to read the message to find out you should have uploaded those files. So if you do that now, it'll save you a little bit of time down the road. So now we're going to go back into the Simple Sharing app. So at this point, we have the Simple Sharing app, for the most part, set up. So I'm going to close the preview app because that is actually the preview for the other AppGyver account, and we're in our Simple Sharing app now. So what we can go ahead and start doing is we need to start setting up our data. So I have a couple sample resources here. We're not really using board 1, but we are using friends, person page details, and then if I'm not mistaken, person page posts, or it may just be the post here, we'll find out, and then profile details. So what we're going to be doing, just to make it a little bit easier, is we need to go back to our project, and you have a couple of different ways of finding your project name or ID. Remember, it's not this right here. Rather, it's the ID that you got when you were setting it up at the beginning stages. So if we go to Firestore Database, you'll see the project right here. Unfortunately, clicking Edit does not allow you to copy the text right here. But if you go to your URL, just after project, in between these two slashes, you should find the exact same text. So we can highlight that and click Copy. Now, when you're in AppGyver, in this page here, we'll click board 1 and just do this for each of these, even if they're not being used, just to make sure you're not accidentally connected to a different database. So all you need to do is in the URL, you'll see right here, it says projects, and next to it is sample do not delete. And that is in between two slashes. Without deleting the slashes, just delete that text and paste in your project ID. And then when you change it here, you should see that it's changed in the other pages as well. Now we will repeat that process for friends, and we'll paste this in, and we'll click Save. Now, there are not too many data resources, so it's a pretty quick process, but these are ones that I've already set up. If you need to change data structures or anything else, I won't cover that in this video, but the general idea is everything is set up to work the way that the demo has been set up or has been shown. So basically, you'll click on each of these, make sure that this has actually been updated. Again, without this, it'll be connected to another database, which at some point I may end up retiring, so it'll cause some serious issues. And then we only have a few more, so again, just right next to projects. It's just the text sample do not delete that we're replacing. I tried to find something that would be easy to remember. And again, repeating the process here. And again, don't delete those slashes if you can avoid it. If you do, just add them back. And then save. So that should be pretty much everything that we need to do for this application. Let's click Launch really quick, and then open Web Preview, and find your Simple Sharing or whatever you called the app. And now we're going to test it real quick. So in this case, what we need to do is we need to type in an email address. So in this case, we are going to type in the support email for codelessfix.com, and then we'll type in a sample password that we can use. Now in this case, when I click login, it's going to say failed because we don't have an account. So what we're going to do, I'm going to grab my phone separately, and I'll go ahead and check my email, but we're going to click create account and click create, and then you'll see verification email sent. Now just to verify that the security on this is working as expected, I'm going to try to log in again, and you'll see I get an error saying I need to log in or verify my email. Now, there's a really good chance that these emails are going to go to spam, but it's the email that we were looking at in the template from Firebase. So I'm on my phone, I've clicked the link, and it says it's been verified. So I will now click login, and now we're logged in. So let's go through the app and make sure the functionality works, and then we will close out the video with basic customization tips. So when we go to post or update, you'll see it says profile not set up, create now. And it says it does pop up twice, and that's because it shows up if you go to the my profile page or my account page. But basically, what we're doing is users need to get to the my account page, and then they need to fill out this information. So about me, I'll just type in some random letters. I don't really care about a profile image URL, and then public username. At this point, everything should be available. So I'll type this in, username available. So in that case, we will click update. And then if the update succeeds, we can double check our Firestore database and see if the data is actually being sent. When you refresh your page, if you see anything come through, that means that the data is actually sending as expected. So we will double check. Now, this will be the first troubleshooting bit we're going to go through. So we're going to right click and click inspect, and we'll go over to our console, and you'll see that we are unable to write to our database. So we are going to go to Firestore database, and we'll go to our rules, and we see allow read write if true. So that is working. So now we'll try to click this page and see what happens. So in this case, it has not found a profile pages document or collection. So we're going to go in a collection ID and put profile pages. Next, you can just click auto ID. We don't really need anything important in here. We just need to make sure that the collection exists. Now we'll go back to Firestore, and this should be a one-time only step. So we'll click update once more and see if it goes through this time. Now in this case, we're going to refresh the page. Sometimes Firebase can have a little bit of a delay. So we're going to click inspect again and see if we're getting an error message. So we're going to click this button right here. And you'll see we're getting an error when accessing this page here, and it's showing not found. So we'll see simple sharing, and it's going to profile details / this. So it's showing that it's not found. So in this case, we need to fix something really, really quickly. All right, so after a little bit of poking around, I want to walk you through why the troubleshooting part is kind of important. You'll see that we have this failure right here for a GET request. And if you look at this, you'll see profile details. This is my user ID. And the best way to explain it is this value is the only document in profile details, and that is not the value here. So the reason that this is failing is not because we needed to add this collection here, but rather we need to change the logic here a bit. I'm a bit hesitant to add this in with the final product, but I'm going to update the version that you're going to be downloading so that you won't encounter this issue, but I do want to explain how this could be useful for you to know. So when you do get record, if it succeeds, this is getting the profile details. If it succeeds, this entire flow continues. However, if it doesn't find a profile detail record for the user, the failure is what happens here, which is nothing. So in this case, this is doing a GET call for the user, basically saying, hey, what's going on with this user? And this is a GET request here. So I'm going to connect the two, so whether this GET record succeeds or fails, this flow will continue. Then we have a separate GET call here. So we're going to save this, and I'll update this in the final application as well. That way you don't have to do this, but you can change this logic if you want. And also, you shouldn't have to create this profile pages document, but if you have, that's fine. So now what we're going to do is we're going to click My Account, and we're going to close this real quick. So now we can update our information. So we'll type in all of our details, check availability, username's available. We'll click Update, and you'll see Updated. And now when we go over here, you'll see we have all of our details here. Now in this case, first time around, nothing usually gets sent. So the idea is you may need to refresh the page a bit. It originally will send blank values, and then it should be sending the new data. So in this case, you'll need to double check that this is actually working as expected, because the way that this works, if the post fails initially, so if we don't get any user data, then it's going to send blank data. And so what I'm going to go ahead and set this up for you to do is when the blank data set is sent, you'll see we have all this information. Then what we're going to need to do is essentially delete that data. So you'll see right here, we run through a delete request, and we are actually deleting that record, which just goes by temp profile URL. And then we are going to be reposting it. And the reason we're doing that is that's our way of essentially updating it. So we can refresh this page and see if anything's saved. But the idea here is if you see these values are empty, then when we log out or go away from the page, you want to see if they're actually updating correctly. So, for example, if we log out of the app, we want to see what actually happens. So when we go to My Account, if we click Update here, let's see if the values change in the database. Because we have profile details over here and profile pages over here. So again, this is just a sample profile page, but these are all the details, so they are in fact sticking. So now that this is working, we don't have to worry about the profile page anymore. So now let's test out the rest of the app and see how it's holding up. So we have made an account for public username. We have this username right here. And I will go ahead and go to people and add myself as a friend. So in this case, I also want to update my page. So we'll do that first. Let's give ourselves a couple posts to go by. And you'll see the posts appear right there. So for page title, I'll just put title. For description, I'll put description, and I'm misspelling it. Feeling, we'll just do 5. Image URL, I don't have one, so here we're going to go to Pixabay. So this is their license. I just put this at the beginning of the video. You can access this from their website. But let's go to their images and just type in, we'll just type in happy. And we'll find some smiley faces. Right click and click copy image address, making sure that you have the license and ability to do so. So if you want, we can actually use this image instead of a background color. And this is actually also, this is the field for your profile. This is going to be the image for your background. So we have the smiley face. Now let's go back and choose a different image. Trying to use colors that'll actually appear and look decent-ish together. So we'll copy image address and we'll paste it in for the background image. I will choose my text color. Let's make it something that can be easy to see. We'll just go with this red color. And for music, we'll choose this song here and submit. So now when I go to my page, you'll see we have this background, this image. If I click play, the song plays. My posts are down here, and all my other info's up here. It's just hard to see because I chose bad colors. Now when I go to people, I'm going to find myself. So we're going to go to my account because I need my username. And then I'll go to people, type in username, and I'm going to add in the number 1. We're going to click add friend, and you'll see not in our records or their account is private. And then add friend without the 1, and the friend gets added, and then they appear right here. And when I click on this, I'm taken to their page. And then I can just click people to go back. So this is working, but the question is, what if I add a second account and want to find this account? Just to make sure, again, that it is in fact working. So what we will do is we're going to create a new user account, and we'll click update. And then what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go to post or update. So I'm going to put a post, and we'll just call it 2. And you'll see the post is updated. Page title, I'm just going to start putting random info in here. I'll choose a 3 out of 5. Background color, we'll do a different text color, different song. Submit. And now we have everything done. So now let's go over to people. You'll see we have our original friend. I'll go to my page. You'll see all of the stuff on our page is updated. Now we're just looking for the post here, number 2. It just updated. New song, which is working. And then this is a default image. So if you don't include one, this is going to be the image that's automatically going to be filled in. I pulled this over from Unsplash. But let's add ourselves real quick. So if we paste in, let me double check and make sure this is the new user name. So we'll go to people and paste in the new username and click add friend. Wait for it to pop up, and these should be in alphabetical order. So we'll find the second friend, and you'll see that page matches our my page. When you navigate between pages, on page load, they should stop the audio, but in some cases, so people will need to go to this page to actually stop the music, which it should stop when this particular page loads. But again, that's really all that there is to it. So you can see people can customize their page. You can add more content. So time to close out this video. So we're going to walk through basic customizations. Now, if you don't know too much about AppGyver, watch the other tutorials on codelessfix.com. But if you go to the home screen, you can click this image here and upload your own image by clicking here. Or you can paste in a link, just make sure you have the right and ability to use whatever image you use, or you can delete this. You can update the text in any page by clicking the box and changing out the content here, just like this. You can edit your pages up here, for example, your privacy policy, you can click here to update it. Same thing with terms and conditions. And then the final things to think about or to note are when you're making edits to your friend page, remember that the text color, for example, you can edit that in the style page, and the color is currently bound to whatever the user sends. So the idea with these pages, if you want to make any changes, adjustments, or updates, you need to remember that the friend page, my page, and then the actual post update page are all linked. There are some bonus pages for you to play around with if you would like. So you'll notice that we haven't gone over this post page. This is not one that's actively being used at all. So this is not used in the app. If you want to delete it, you can click here and click remove. That's an unnecessary page, but that way you have something to play around with that has some sample stuff on it. Now, one thing to note though, again, for example, and I'll just show you the link and then we can kind of close out this video, is if you go over, so we're kind of scrolling through all of these different pages. Now, if you're ever having issues after you've been doing a lot of testing, clear your cache and your data for Google Chrome or whatever browser you're using. Sometimes that can cause some issues. And also, the other thing to note here is when you go to post or update, when you're making an update on this page, for example, when you click submit, it is going to be sending, if you scroll through all of this, at the very end, this HTTP request is what's being sent. It's sent to this URL, which isn't really relevant, but the request body is what's being sent. So if you want to send a new field, it's pretty self-explanatory. The title of the page, the feeling, the page description. So if you want to set up a new page, you can look at my other videos on how to send data in AppGyver. But the idea here is from the comma to the just before the next comma is the field that's being sent. So the idea is if I wanted to send a new field, I can go to the very end at the last, I guess it would be third to last bracket, and I could paste in from the comma to the bracket. So in this case, in the double quotes, this is what I want Firebase to see. So I could type in a bunch of letters. And then the value is going to be page vars, which is the page variable, dot whatever your page variable is. In this case, you would then need to click on your variables tab and go to page variables, create a variable for it, which you just named, and then you need to save changes and make those same changes on the other pages. Now, the way that the app works is when you go to your friend page, for example, if we are looking through and we find we have the friend page here. Now, these values are all bound to page parameters. So you'll see right here. So we just need to click and add a new parameter for whatever that value is that we just added. And then you can save it. And then you need to make that addition on my page. So basically, you would add in, these are all page variables. So you'll add in your page variable that you just created. And then we need to update your page layout. So in the My Page, you'll see that we are setting different variables, and the one that you need to set, this page variable, is the next one that you just made. So you can just copy and paste this little node, put it in here in this stack somewhere. So what I would recommend is just kind of push all these down a bit and avoid messing with the audio ones. And you can just drop a new set page variable. Set the page variable. The assigned value is going to be the output of another node. So you can click here. You'll see if it's showing that you don't have anything available. It's bound to output of another node, no available options. And in this case, what you need to do is just make sure that it's set to the correct one. So you'll see here this one is set to the output. So you'll just need to copy the formula over. And then the last thing you will need to do is when you go to your friend page, let's see if we can find it somewhere. So when we're looking for people, we can load this page real quick, and you'll notice when you open a page, when you're scrolling through, we have all of our friends list here, and when you click open page, all of these are the page parameters. So this is the new parameter I just created. This is a variable being passed in between. So you can do output of another node, and this is where you're going to find whatever your new parameter is. Now, when you're adding these, anytime you want something to show up, for example, we initially set up a new bit of data that's being sent to Firebase, and I know I'm being quick here, but the idea is you need to go to the corresponding data record. So when we do our data records, we go to run test. This schema, all of these values, you can click save here, but the record, all of those values are what appear when we want to send a get record request. So if I want to update the parameter on a different page, the output of get record is going to be, this is the schema we were literally just looking at, or one of. All of these different values are the values you want to grab. So you need to post your data to Firebase, get the data here, and send it throughout your application. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the Contact Us form at the codelessfix.com website. But this was a high-level overview. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment box below, and I'll see you all in the next video.